Yeah, good. Good rolling. All right. Hi, Joe. So we're having a conversation after a very long time since we spoke. Um, you were in a different platform at the time, Connect to the Future, where we looked at the future of currency and the financial system going forward. Albeit that, I think we were expecting a heightened level of engagement, and I think the audience was very much far removed from the reality that which you shared with the rest of us. Albeit we appreciate your time and your efforts coming through the last time.
No, thank you. It was for me to
So I just want to.
conversations with people. Sometimes you wonder if you are sharing, are people, is the ground cultivated enough for people to consume such information? Sometimes you can see some people in the audience, they're like, yeah, this guy, you don't know. But while we're there, the elite and the world does not stop because we don't understand. It keeps on happening up to a point where the agenda will be fulfilled. So they don't stop.
Absolutely. So which brings us to a very interesting conversation of the recent happenings. It's hot off the press. It's stuff we haven't seen certainly in our lifetime. I mean, I'm talking. I can't remember when America was in that type of a political dilemma. But yeah, we are living it. In 2021, Trump refuses to concede the election outcomes, with Joe Biden being the president-elect. And we saw the movie that took that took place in the Capitol in Washington, D.C. On Wednesday. I think it was what date is it today? It was the 6th of January 2021, and nobody could have thought whatever happened. But for me, what is interesting is how Trump lived through this very contrasted perceptions in as far as his presidency is concerned, and also him as an individual, either being a businessman or a politician, given however you want to categorize him, in whichever sort of, I'd say, position you want to put him in, whether you want to put him as a businessman, whether you want to put him as a politician, whether you want to put him as the president, he always had this very strong promotional views and strong anti-views. You just could never settle the idea of what the man is all about and what generally people feel about him. And again, for us, people that are not of the United States, I'd say citizenry, we really are relying on media and alternative sources, and even some of our friends that live in America, to really understand what is happening in there. And for me, I'm picking it up from the early days when he said he was running for the presidency. I almost fell off my chair with laughter because I thought, this is a joke, right? I mean, Trump, the last time I saw him, he was saying, "You're fired," in the boardrooms of the Apprentice show. And
TV show,
yeah. And then he went on to obliterate all the Republican opponents, to eventually taking the presidential nomination of the Republicans, to annihilating poor Hillary Clinton, who went on a coma, I think, not coma, but I mean, she went off the scene for at least 3 months, to the president who was being very much, chased on the impeachment by colluding with external forces. But on the other hand, a man that has changed the economy of the US in a shorter space of time and really revitalized dead industries and put tariffs in place that really revitalized the economy of the Americans. What are we to think of this man in terms of his background, him coming into the scene and eventually living a life as a president for the last 5 years?
We first need to understand that every presidential candidate, or should we say every president that sits and lead a country, he's been given maybe 10 key points. China is using 15 points. South Africa, I've never heard of points that are given a president to say you need to achieve from here to there. In America, they also have their own scorecard, kind of. So for Trump, he was given a mandate to bring back what has been lost in the economic system of America, and of which he wouldn't have been able to achieve all of that in one term. But at the same time, he did not do much for the military-industrial complex. He did not do much for the oil industrial complex. He did not do much for the usual suspects, the neocons, the neoconservatives, the warmongers, the guys that will now say, let's go for Iran. It was highly expected that when he came to the office, the first thing that he did was to do away with the deal of allowing Iran to manufacture their nuclear, because so it was supposed to be managed to a certain level. He was not happy about that, because some of the neocons on the Republican, they needed a direct confrontation with Iran to further blow up Middle East. So more and more American corporations can take over in that region. That was the first thing that the neocons realized, that this man was not there to serve the military-industrial complex. So they were excited while they was campaigning, because they thought he was going to be stupid enough to just confront. The amount of wars that he, or the amount of orders that he issued. I remember one that he issued when they bombed in Syria to try and shake Assad to step down. It didn't really work because Russia's presence was there. The second most famous order that he issued was killing the head of the military of Iran, General Sulaiman. So those were the major things that we heard about, and we had somehow expected that there was a move that it's still being done in the Pacific, where we were expecting America to invade Venezuela. That was going to be mainly motivated by oil, and of which that war never really happened. So the biggest question will be, who did Trump serve? Did Trump serve the corporations in Wall Street? Did Trump serve the neocons in Pentagon? Did Trump serve the Rockefellers in Manhattan? Did Trump serve the Rothschilds in London? But looking at how the move, because the first thing that you need to understand for American presidents, what are your stance on Israel? The first thing that they want to know. What are your stance on Israel? He went to move the embassy from one place to the other. That gave Israel hope. That gave Israel hope to say, oh, this man will be here for us. But he didn't do much. And while we're there, we also need to see that Israel realized that Trump was not necessarily interested. America was now shifting their goalpost as far as Middle East policy is concerned. They were moving out of Middle East. Then Israel allegedly had to bomb Beirut to keep the presence of America in the region, so they can have a big brother should Iran attack them. You know, so these are the first elements.
This is after the fallout with NATO and all of these type of organizations.
Yes, and part of the reason why he said it, he said America is paying so much for military that is supposed to keep Europe safe. But remember, the whole aim of NATO was to fight against the Soviets.
Of course.
And when the Soviet collapsed, they agreed that the NATO, if NATO is still relevant in Europe, they must not come anywhere near Russian borders. But now they're in the doorstep So hence Trump came, he was perceived to be a Russian, pro-Russian president. Because when he came, he didn't say NATO pull out, he cut the funding. He said Germany, the chief beneficiary of this, Germany should now fund that kitty. So that it looked more like we're supposed to fight the boogeyman who's Russia. You are coming, you are disarming us from fighting Russia, because he said, if we don't sit down with Russia, we're not going to be able to create a better world. So what he was trying to do there, he was playing a card of saying, we need Russia, isolate China. His war with China, it was solely economical. That was an economic war. So why are we paying Chinese so much money to manufacture things that we can manufacture ourselves? And that is where many people, including Vincent, will have a soft spot on Trump based on the policies of saying America is for Americans. When you are a president, when you are a president, you need to first look at domestic before the foreign policy. But remember, every empire collapsed plus or minus after 200 to 250 years. Maybe this was the time for America to collapse, because they have spent so much money and time on foreign policy that does not necessarily do much for the locals. It does much for corporations, because if Iraq collapse, Exxon, Chevron, Shell, BP go and suck the whole entire oil to Europe, to America, and leave the people of the actual inhabitants of those areas where they've attacked. They leave them like that. So now coming back to the actual Trump coming in.
Because I wanted to come back to the scorecard to say, so who does it look like the scorecard came from?
So the scorecard will, remember, Trump's father was a Rockefeller man. That made Trump to be a Rockefeller man. If you look at the archives, David Rockefeller organized and also attended Trump's wedding in 1978.
Of course. And look at the type of businesses that he was involved in. It's a pure Rockefeller style of business. Yeah.
Exactly. If you were to go to our Instagram page, we managed to get hold of those David Rockefeller cards. David Rockefeller was a man that used to write things. So in his archives, he wrote, he took a picture, he made a card, he wrote the wedding of Donald Trump, 1978, where it happened. Because at that time, he was doing business with Trump's father, not necessarily. So Trump is more like, the Rockefellers are more like his family. So when he was then told that he needs to run, he accepted the challenge. He was not really into, but he was prepared to say, this is what's going to happen. We will make sure you win. If you go for one term, just make sure that the people that are supposed to be a problem to us, or those countries out there, you need to neutralize them. So the only way to squeeze China is to pull your resources out, is to cut China out in manufacturing, where a lot of money, a lot of things will come from China. They send formulas to China, China makes and send it to them, then China pays. China was starting to be clever, said, no, pay us in gold, no longer pay us in currency. And if ever you want to pay us in dollars, we will convert it into our currency. So America started to see that in Eurasia, the dollar was starting to lose power. And them doing direct business with somebody that they will later wage war against is basically financing China against themselves.
Against themselves,
so, against themselves, because there's a lot of things happening in China, in China South Sea, where there's a lot of Navy, there's a lot of presence of Navy. America, Russia, China, all these guys are wanting to make sure that America must be neutralized. At the same time, China has hold to say this is our territory. You will never see us going to be somewhere not far from Miami claiming anything there. So Trump was to minimize the budget of military, was to minimize the budget of money that they were spending on their foreign policy, saying let's focus on domestics, businesses that were slowly collapsing. In fact, he was doing a damage control that was somehow done by the Obama when in 2008 it collapsed. It was still, it was part of the recovery for America to do.
Absolutely.
But the sad thing is that kind of recovery, it does not necessarily reach to the ordinary person. It first reaches to the corporations, then the change, or should we call it the loose change, goes to the ordinary people, because in unemployment in America is still high, because they were outsourcing most of the functions. When GM moved to Mexico, they started manufacturing in China, in Korea. They started importing. Then the locals did not necessarily benefit. So even when Trump, when he cut off
the industries,
the what does the TPP, the transatlantic agreement, it was to say we can no longer take jobs of Americans to Europe.
Of course,
Europe have, and at the same time, we're looking after Europe militarily. We're paying more, yet they're just benefiting. So all those things were seen as this guy, yet he was given the mandate. Make no mistake, he was given the mandate by his bosses to say, these are the things that are a problem. Obama did not do it. If he did it, he served well for military industrial complex. He spent so much money on drones. He spent so much money on all this equipment, where he went to Libya. Even today, Libya has not yet recovered. So when Trump came, he did blame some of those things, tried to correct, because the neocons were not happy with him. Most of those Republicans that were in the list of Epstein, remember, he locked a lot of guys from Epstein who were child trafficking. He closed
that Epstein
most
story
of those.
was interesting, because I really started seeing a big shift towards his exit around those times when the likes of Epstein and all of these people were being cited all around media. It really almost became quite murky.
Yes, those. In fact, those are the things that made smart people, ordinary people, Vincent, Joe, and everyone else to think twice now to say, is this guy really bad? Who are the people that are telling us that Trump is bad? If you look at the people that preach the gospel that Trump is bad, it was the Republicans. And they have the best-selling card of making sure that the world turn against this guy by using racism. So when you use racism, there's no in between. You use racism to your benefit to say this guy. But if you look at the rest of the things that this guy did, looking Epstein, if he was a real, he might not have been tough when it comes to racism. But when you look at how he dealt with Republicans, the child trafficking, all these satanic things, that the rituals, the girls that were killed, the kids that were kidnapped, the containers that were found to be going into some island, he closed all those things down. And it was the Podesta brothers, that the emails that were linking Hillary into there. These are all the things that they were uncomfortable on. And most of those guys were the neocons that did not benefit that much, because there was no big or direct confrontation with any country during the 4-year term this man was in the office. So before we shift into, so what seemed to be happening now, there's two things here. You also need to understand that in any chaos that is happening around the world, there's one man who's always fingered. Do not be surprised that he was also behind that, to make it look like Trump was, those people were funded by Trump. Remember, these guys, they fund both sides of the conflict. I'm not going to be surprised. I'm not going to be surprised to find out that later, George Soros was part of
I was just about to say, do we just mention him? Or
You know,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
so
yeah.
so for me, I would say George Soros might have, because remember, part of Joe Biden winning, 60% it was Soros who played the role.
Mm.
He made sure those protests that were happening that got a lot of black people, even those. Now you might be even led into look at this George Floyd thing as a part of the campaign against Trump.
Mm.
Yes, amends. We're not saying people must be killed just like that,
Yeah,
but we
yeah,
say
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's a policy on the elite when they said never let good crisis go to waste.
To waste,
So
absolutely.
that
Yeah.
so that kind of crisis with George Floyd and many other things
Mm. Mm.
that happened in the U.S., the Republicans did not realize that that was going to come back to haunt them. As a result, the agenda, the smooth sailing that we're focusing on, as far as bringing back the American economy back on its feet. Now, the guys that are coming in are the very same guys that, for the past couple of years, they have been involved in a lot of confrontation with many countries where the military-industrial complex really benefits. Because remember, if you have the biggest consumer of oil in the world is American Navy.
And their military.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yes. So you cannot be desperate for oil if your navy is not in the sea, because those machines need to keep running. So in this case, the oil companies didn't necessarily make much money because there was nothing much. There was no movement
To
of
fund. There was no
hardware.
animal. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
It's only a few weeks ago where America sent bombers to be in the area should they confront China, should they confront Iran. But their foreign policy is back to haunt them now. They have 26 to 27 billion for military. That did not really work for them when those guys, those hooligans, came into the very same place where the 26 to 27 billion military budget is approved. So what does that tell you? Somebody big enough, because there's a video that showed the police opening the barricade for these people to come.
Of course.
Now you
Absolutely.
must remember within the American system, these two families will continue to dominate. You'll find a group of police who are still pro-Rockefeller. You'll find a group of police who will be pro-Rothschild. So within the police department, within the systems, they will fight amongst each other. When you start to witness things like those. Now, the head of the police at the Capitol has resigned because they are blaming him to say, how did these people gain access?
Like security. Sure.
But it's Pentagon. If some people in the Pentagon knew about that, these people have CIA, have Secret Service, have NSA, have all FBI, have all these agencies. Where was the intelligence? That's number one. If they can find Osama bin Laden 12 years later, they could not have known something was about to happen in their doorstep in 15 minutes.
Yep. Are you there, Joe? We're back.
Yeah. So for me, it was, there was a message that was being sent to America to say the time has come for the empire to collapse so we can restart. Because we know. Yeah, carry on.
No. So where I want to get to really is life past Trump, because I mean it's obvious that I think I heard today that he said we're getting ready for a smooth transition of power in say less than 10 days really, because I mean on the 21st Joe Biden will be inaugurated. But there's a bigger question here around the global agenda, which is at the center of all of these theatricals that we're seeing. And my sense is to say, whether Trump or Biden, there is a global trajectory that is being pursued. And at the moment, the race for me, for the longest time, has been very tight. And right now, there seems to be a very clear lead of a particular a family that is taking off. And sitting here, I'm thinking, look at what is happening in technology. Look at what's happening in renewables. Look at what is happening in just the global trend in as far as investment and activity is concerned, economic activity is concerned. There is a clear winner here, even after the race has been so tight for quite a while.
Look, while you're there, you just reminded me of the games that were played.
Yeah.
It was said that the COVID was a Rockefeller project. then in documents, remember, these were the same people that were fingered in doing a lot of testing of these chemicals in the one, the most famous one, where they injected 400 black men with syphilis, wanting to see how all this military experiment that they human to test. So it was then said that when it was in the heart, in the midst of lockdown, in the project that was seen or perceived to be a Rockefeller project, then the protest came where there was no mask, where there was no sanitizer, where there was no social distance.
Globally.
And that was there to undermine these guys project. To say, the Rothschilds are saying, we see you, what you are trying to do, but we'll show the world that when we go out and protest, there's no COVID. So people were asking themselves that people were burning things.
There when you need to go shop.
You know, so people were asking themselves that, okay, these people are protesting globally. There's no mask, there's nothing, and the police can't even say anything, and we don't even hear how many people were infected or this. So that was basically trying to prepare America to say, this presidency, this family that has been running for this long, they've lied to you. They've told you that there's a COVID. They've told you that there's this, there's that. And look at how they're treating it. And it made even things worse. Trump tested positive 2-3 days later. He took off the mask. He was back at work. So he didn't help. When he was supposed to be campaigning at times, he's playing golf. And the media that was pro-Joe will use that as a tool to say, this guy is not even serious. But the people that understood, Joe was the same person who said these kids are not going to share a school with Negroes. You understand? And some stupid people were hyped up enough to circulate a video of Joe Biden screaming and shouting at the South African authorities back in the day to say, why are you oppressing black people? So people were saying, no, but Joe no. People say, why was South Africa a high contestation geopolitical player at the time? Because both families were operating in South Africa. Joe was serving the agenda of the Rothschilds. The other guys were serving the agenda of the Rockefeller. So people were not understanding that part.
Yeah. So just to get ahead of where we are right now is that Joe Biden is now going to be president. It's clear that COVID is turning around its fruit. The vaccines are on their way. Where can we focus our attention in as far as the next set of the scenes of this movie that we're looking at of global total power and having to ensure that this family is keeping its position as being at the epic of everything that is going to happen going forward in our lives?
I think since Trump conceded, it's a game changer for the world, because if Trump conceded and he is willing to cooperate for so-called smooth transition, it means now they are going to go back and sit, because you need to stop playing games. We need to make sure we push this agenda of the COVID the cashless society, more technology, one world
100%.
COVID passport. We will need to continue us on collapsing the economy of China. We need to continue and neutralize Iran. We need to make sure that we do not have people who are going to be on the way if we want to start implementing what has been written by the elite to make sure that everybody that is in this planet must comply with the vaccine or to live on the cashless society or whatever the case would be. So we will see it will stabilize again. But once it stabilizes, and the fact that Trump only spoke after everything, that will also make you think that the message and the agenda that was supposed to be fulfilled is done. So that's why now he can come out to say, okay, it's fine, I'm gonna step down, I'm gonna do this, because the bigger message was sent across to the world to say, America is not what you think it is. And because I'm living as Trump, expect more of this. So if Trump he had a hand in it, it was a strong message. If the Soros Foundation or the Open Society Foundation had something to do with it, it might work towards changing the laws where martial law will be implemented, where the country or the state security agencies are going to be tougher on people based on that. Remember, they need crisis to happen so they can change the laws according to that. This is also a duplication of what happened in 2001 when the trade towers were taken down. New laws had to be implemented. So that case there is happening, ushering a way for new laws to be implemented as well. Now we have COVID, that is also ushering a new way to be implemented.
Changing the future of life. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
COVID passports to travel across the world. So these are the things that are yet to come that we are going to be experiencing. Now we see Sputnik 5 in China, in Russia. The vaccine is ready. It's been ready. But now pro-Western countries and pro-Western government, they prefer to go for the vaccines from the West with the Pfizer and the Johnson and the likes.
Yeah. And we're also going to be getting some Pfizer some Pfizer vaccines quite soon in the country. Anyway, Joe, I think it's pretty clear as to what the trajectory is, I guess, going forward. The winner of this round is certainly quite clear as far as I'm concerned. And again, it's not for you and I to call it and to mention names. I think the conversation that we are having is not a conversation that is at a social level. It's not a conversation that's at an academic level. It's not a conversation that's at a political level. It's a conversation that is at a globalization or geopolitics level. A topic where, when it's landed on people's circles, it is all a conspiracy theory, because nobody understands geopolitics, not even to a very short extent where they can see their lives being affected by geopolitics, but they'll still ignore it. So I guess a lot of it does not touch on the practical senses of move. It doesn't pass most of the tests that people would use to sort of use as a barometer of how true and how certain all of what we are talking about is. But again, it's up to individuals to make their minds up about all of this, to go back and read up, to go back and search, look at the patterns, look at the trends, and make up their minds. And thank you once again for sharing this time with me and just exciting me about I guess the obvious, because I mean, the more you look at it, the more obvious it becomes, and you think, why the hell is anyone not seeing this? But again, it's what it is. That's where we are.
I think what has happened is that we have seen more and more of regional thinkers amongst our society. So if you are a regional thinker, it's very difficult to start seeing things at a global level, because even the media, even the trends, even the things that are around you, they channel your mind to think in a certain way. So when your mind is not able to consume certain kind of information, you quickly rush to call it conspiracy theory. So what you said, you are 100% correct. It's us making an effort to create small cycles can recruit more thinkers who will come and be interested on understanding where the future is going. Like in your group, you guys you picked the topic that even the local televisions don't even want to touch it because the mental capacity of our people, they are not yet ready to carry such kind of topics, to carry such, because the easiest way of brushing anything off is to call it a conspiracy theory, and then it's goodbye. You're done. You can go to sleep. So I think the more we engage like this, it's gonna open eyes more and ears and create lust for this kind of information from our people. And thank you very much once more, Mr. Smith.
Thank you so much, Joe. It's been a pleasure, and we chat soon.
Okay, thank you.